Hello, Ectosage here on the Sage channel, and on June 9th of 2015, there was a blog post on Merrick Rosa's dev blog. If you do not know, Merrick Rosa is the CEO of Keen Software House. This dev blog was made by Andrei Petrzylka, the lead developer for Space Engineers and Medieval Engineers. In this devlog, they talked about the future updates for Medieval Engineers, what they've currently done, and what is coming next. So what I'm going to do is just go ahead and read through that. I'll have the text up on screen, and there'll be descriptions or links in the description down below if you'd like to go ahead and just click on that and read through it yourself. I'm also probably going to say a little thing here and there, but I'll try to make it clear when I'm not just reading out. Anyway, shall we get started? Hello, I am Andrei Petrzylka, lead developer for Space and Medieval Engineers. In this blog post, I would like to shed some light on our current and future plans with Medieval Engineers. Currently, we're working on three big things: Castle Siege, that has just been released, Survival, and Clans. Before I continue, let me emphasize that everything I say in this blog post is subject to change. The process of game development at our studio goes through multiple stages: idea, concept, development, testing, feedback, and more development. And during later stages, it's likely that some of the earlier stages will get changed due to feedback and experience that we will gain later. First up, we have Castle Siege. The original idea was to create a game mode where players could easily test their castle and siege weapon designs. This is the first iteration of this feature, and we will be working on it during the upcoming weeks. We plan to add more weapons, armor, and a better combat system, including ranged weapons. We're also considering enabling some survival features in Castle Siege. So basically, obviously what he's saying there is there's going to be armor. Okay, he said there was, armor there, so it's a possibility that we will actually see proper armor. He did say more weapons, and he said ranged weapons. He didn't just say a ranged weapon, so we can expect, hopefully, to see bows as well as my favorite would be a crossbow. Well, maybe not my favorite. I really do prefer bows, but do look forward to a lot of new weapons coming, or at least a few. Anyway, moving on. In Castle Siege mode, there are two teams: attackers and defenders. Defenders choose a map with a castle, and attackers choose siege weapons and one of the predefined positions where they would like to start an attack. The goal for attackers is to destroy the king statue within a preset time limit. The statue is hidden somewhere inside the castle. Attackers can use different approaches to destroy the statue. They can attack with siege weapons and destroy the statue directly. They can use ladders to get over the walls, they can destroy the walls with siege weapons, and they can run inside, or they can even dig under the castle. For more information, they do have a tutorial video they put out, and of course, if you look through my channel history, I do have a guide for this mode as well. Moving on, we have Survival. It was clear after our survey that the majority of players would like us to focus on Survival mode. We've been working on several features for a long time now, and for the next weeks/months, Survival will be our priority. You can see the results from our survey here, and I'll put those up on screen for you right now. And you can see that a lot of people were really wanting Survival. About 28% of people actually wanted using gathering, processing materials, and as well as other people wanting crafting stuff. So, big time, a lot of people wanted that. And one of my personal favorites, food, actually came in third there with 11%. Eventually, I would also like to definitely see this game with a more variety of construction blocks, not just stone, but maybe big stone. Well, again, stone, but maybe marble or bigger blocks. More hard edges to them, sort of. Well, proper blocks and not just stones selectively chosen. Anyway, moving on from that, we do have what they're planning to do for character stats. We plan to introduce health, stamina, and food, and maybe water later on. Stamina will be used for sprinting, combat, and hard labor. Stamina will regenerate automatically, but when a character is low on food, stamina regeneration will be limited. Food will provide a temporary stamina generation boost, and different foods will have different boosts. Health will regenerate automatically very slowly, but during sleep, it will regenerate faster. Some food and items, e.g. bandages, will have a health regeneration effect. Food will be automatically reduced over time, and characters will have to eat, otherwise they'll be weak and eventually die. We plan to add an inventory, which will allow players to carry items like food, construction components, nails, and wood spikes, and other small items and components we'll introduce in the future. Moving on to food in specific. Players will have to obtain food to survive, so we plan to add several food sources into the game. Players will be able to go out into the woods and gather berries, mushrooms, and roots. Some of them will respawn in their original place, and some will respawn randomly. Another food source we plan to add is wildlife. Players will be able to hunt deer for food, and later other animals, including dangerous ones like bears and wolf packs. In later stages of the game, players will be able to farm and raise cattle. So that's pretty awesome right there. They've just basically told us that they're going to have food. One of the main effects of not eating won't necessarily be that you die. It looks like they'll have that, but the main drawback looks like it's going to be a lower stamina, and it looks like you might have some issues with health. But main way to regenerate health looks to be sleeping and bandages at current, and I suspect that the dying from lack of eating will be based on a slider or something of that sort, just like in the Space Invaders they have lots of sliders. I suspect we'll see quite a few there. They also did say that they're talking about farming there to raise cattle. That sounds pretty damn awesome to have your own food source there, and I'm sure they'll even have farming, which is something I'm a big fan of. And they also mentioned fighting more dangerous things like bears and wolves. Medieval Engineers isn't so much of a fantasy game, but once I get that sort of stuff in there, I'm pretty sure a lot of people, myself included, will be interested in modding that. I'm not much of a character person, but I'm sure there's other out there. I'd love to have some necrotic creatures sneaking about in my forest, or maybe if you have a graveyard you built, something comes crawling out of there. That would be nice. Anyway, moving on. Again, that's modding, by the way. Just to be clear, that is modding I'm talking about when it comes to the undead things that I'd just like to see eventually. That, considering this is made by the same devs who did Space Invaders, I'm sure we'll be seeing modded stuff in this very easily. Moving on. Seasons! We plan to add seasons to make survival more interesting and entertaining. The game will start during spring, and players will have 3 seasons to prepare for winter and obtain enough food, because during winter, food sources will be scarce. We're also thinking about introducing a new stat: heat. Players would have to get warm clothes and firewood for winter. With seasons, farming will become more interesting. It will be necessary to sow crops in spring and harvest them during late summer or autumn. Crops will get destroyed during winter. During winter, pastures will be covered with snow, and players will have to feed the cattle with hay, otherwise they will die of hunger. So right there is something pretty extreme, actually. So let's take Minecraft, for instance, because it's the one game everyone pretty much knows, and it doesn't really have seasons, it's got biomes, and this game will eventually have biomes as well. Well, in different biomes in Minecraft, everything still really functions the same, except for a few small things. Well, they're talking about seasons here, where you're going to have massive changes to how your game actually plays. And they're actually talking about having a set starting time. I suspect in the future you'd be able to change this, so you'll start not necessarily in spring, but maybe in winter if you would like to have a much harder start, or that maybe you have to hunt those hardy animals out there to survive. Also, they mentioned the heat stat, which could, I think, be really awesome. Overall, I'm a bit up in the air about how difficult a lot of this sounds. I'm actually quite the fan of just, not really realistic farming, and the fact that you go water, 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 you give it a 5 to 20 minutes and there's something to harvest, sort of like Minecraft. But again, we can always expect maybe there'll be sliders, and the fact that they're going for this full-on realistic mode in a lot of ways means you could really see yourself building up some pretty hefty supplies and ways to store your food, store your crops, and keep your animals safe. Really developing a whole city around just one of these things. You can see yourself doing a lot of that stuff just to survive. Anyway, moving on. And of course, a lot of times in these games, people want objectives. Just surviving, if it requires this much stuff, that's really going to give people objectives. Anyway, moving on, we have building. We plan to release the first version of the building very soon. Good God. To build any large block, players will have to obtain components first. Currently, the only components are wood timbers, scrap wood, and stone. Players will be able to build simple houses in the first version. It won't be necessary to carry all the components from the inventory to build something, but the components will have to be placed next to the character. After this point, we'll continuously add more blocks. Later, we'll introduce new materials and ways of obtaining them. We plan to add hay in order to make hay roofs and feed cattle in the winter. We will also introduce clay for making roofs, wooden walls, dishes, and basic furnaces, and iron ore to make iron weapons, armor, nails, and mechanisms. We will also add limestone to make grout, sandstone is lightweight stone, and materials for cloth. So right there comes to something I was actually, I believe, talking about earlier about wanting more materials. So looks like they're going to be adding a whole lot more to do. They speak about cloth probably for your armor, as well as making maybe tint tarps and similar things to that. And I believe windmills is something they have shown in the past, so you could end up needing it for that. Also, earlier they did mention crops, or not, well, yes, they mentioned crops, but they also mentioned cattle and livestock, so you could possibly see sheep and other things for your cloth there, needing to raise animals to gather your cloth. Alright, moving on from there, they have crafting. Players will be able to craft items in 3 different ways. The first way will be through a toolbar, where the player will simply put an item he wants to craft on the toolbar and then place it. Crafting will consume certain materials, and the crafted item will appear in the front of the player. This way, the player will be able to craft only very simple things. A second way of crafting will be through a crafting table or forge. In this way, the player will be able to craft furniture, barrels, chests, mechanisms, weapons, and armor. The last way of crafting will be through a furnace. This will be an unattended way of crafting, where the player will put ore and firewood into the furnace, and after some time, they will get ingots. So that's pretty cool. Looks like the first way is similar to creative mode almost, where you go ahead and place, or probably like Space Engineers, where you go ahead and have it on your hotbar, you click the place and it just places maybe a slightly unfinished version. Who knows, maybe it will be the full version, as long as you have the materials on your person or near you. The second version there they talked about was using the forge. That sounds a lot similar to Minecraft and their crafting table, but also maybe the assembler from Space Engineers, and the fact that you tell it to build certain things and it'll build them. Pretty interesting stuff that, and again they mentioned armor and weapons there, so pretty cool, and mechanisms again, very, very interesting. And then the last way would be through a furnace, so that's a bit duplicate there, so I believe they mentioned you'd be using, well, a forge in the previous one and then a furnace on this one, but still pretty awesome that you'd have your furnace cooking out pieces of raw material for you. Anyway, moving on, we have water. We would like to add fully simulated water, but we're not sure if it's going to be possible because of the performance. First, we'll add simple planar water. At sea level, there will be always water. This will allow us to make lakes, wells, and also fake rivers. Even though this has limited potential, it'll still be interesting for players. We plan to transport water in buckets and barrels and use it for drinking, cooking, and farming. It can also be used to extinguish fires and to power mechanical blocks. So once again, they have talked about water. So here we go. If you've wondered, where's the water, Medieval Engineers? It's coming. You can see though they mentioned they want to have it fully simulated, just sort of like Terraria, but in a 3D world. And maybe even with more fidelity than that one would hope. Unfortunately, you can expect that to either be pretty far down the line or be pretty system intensive. If they get that going, it is going to be truly something unbelievable, but do expect that to be a long ways off. The planar water, if you don't understand what that's talking about, if you know what sea level is, that's basically the level at which water exists even beneath your feet. Even if, let's say you're in some place where I live, in Florida, there's always water about 4 or 5 feet below your feet. And that's, if you dig down, you hit that. And anywhere you dig pretty much in Florida, at least in the general vicinity where that's the sea level, you're going to hit water after you dig down that far. It looks like that's going to be a similar thing for Medieval Engineers, where even if you're, well, no matter where you are, you dig down to that certain level, just like in Minecraft you find bedrock at this level, it'll be like that, but you'll find water at that level. And so even though we'll have rivers that flow over, the water will not actually look like it's flowing probably, at least starting out until they come up with some more advanced things, and it'll all be probably pretty flat. Okay, moving on from that, we have mechanical blocks, which they've hinted at above about mechanisms, so maybe this will get into that. We plan to start adding mechanical blocks when there's basic survival. Players will, got an itch. Players will use mechanical blocks to power lifts and automated hammers and forges. In the future, there'll be more uses for them. So that's pretty cool. Little tiny thing. Not sure if that's the same thing they were talking about earlier when they said mechanisms, but that could come into this basically, is where you need to build mechanisms to make a mechanical block. Who knows? But that's pretty awesome. You can imagine that doing a whole lot of different stuff with that, and it's interesting to see automatic hammers and forges, and who knows? Could get slightly less historical accurate. We'll find out, I guess, eh? And moving on from those survival aspect sort of things, we have clans. Clans will come additionally with survival gameplay. The idea is that a player or multiple players will have their clan and they will try to survive. Players will be able to play as any member of the clan, and the rest of the clan members will be controlled by an AI. Players will be able to switch between clan members. AI-controlled clan members will be able to do some simple tasks like farming, gathering food, or raw materials. Manufacturing items in a workshop, helping to build structures, or patrol castle walls and alert others in case of danger. We would like the player to do interesting and entertaining things in the game, while simple and repetitive tasks can be done by AI-controlled clan members. When a clan member dies of old age or when it gets killed, it won't respawn. It'll be lost permanently. New clan members can be born when there are men and women at reproductive age. We're already working on new character models, a female, an old lady, and an old man and a child. Old characters won't be as efficient in manual work, but they will have the advantage of experience so they can be utilized in workshops or kitchens. Children won't be able to do any work on their own, but they will follow an adult clan member and help them, giving them a bonus. +1 to crafting speed. Something like that I'm expecting. So that's all pretty cool and something that I've been suspecting would be on the verge. Not so much the idea of switching between different characters. That's actually kind of new and awesome, isn't it? The idea that instead of having your big fortress and like, I need to go down and check on that wall, you'll simply, I'm assuming, switch out to some sort of zoomed out screen and be able to select another character and zoom into that. Or maybe it'll be a pull down list, or who knows, a hot selection thing where you control shift 8 and now you're at whatever character you've bound to that one who you know is always at that one guard tower way out there. Also, I'd like to point out, because I do mention AI here, that Polygon has gone ahead and made a bit of a post about the AI that Keen Software House has been working on. It looks like they're actually maybe even making a spin-off company just to work on that, but they're going to be taking their advanced learning AI that sort of learns like a child and apparently bringing it back into medieval engineers and space engineers. So you can expect that this AI could get pretty advanced and pretty damn cool, actually. So don't expect it to be too hopeless in the distant future, or maybe even not the so distant future. Also, they do talk about people getting old and needing to replenish the people, so again, that probably ties back into something I suspected was coming, is the idea of food and all this needing to be gathered, not so much to keep you alive, as much as just to ensure that your people continue to survive and thrive. Because without the food and all that stuff, your people are going to get old and die out, or die of cold and all these other things, so you're going to have to make sure you keep your people fed, they'll keep reproducing, you'll have a stable population. This game is really starting to look like it's going to have a lot more RTS aspects to it than you really would have expected when it first started showing up. Of course, I'm sure you can still just play in creative mode and build some pretty impressive places and just have random battles if you'd like. Anyway, we're on to the conclusion now. These features are among the largest and most complex that we are planning to implement in Medieval Engineers, and their development will be a long-term procedure. Please feel free to post your suggestions and ideas either under this blog post or, more preferably, at our suggestions subform here, link. Your feedback is valuable. Thanks, Andrei Petrzilka. And then, of course, they have their links to their Facebook, Twitter for both of their games, Medieval Engineers and Space Engineers. And please note that AI I mentioned, it will be coming to Medieval Engineers, or Space Engineers as well. Not necessarily the swapping between people thing, but the fact that they do have their offshoot AI development people, that will definitely be coming to Space Engineers according to, I believe, what I read on Polygon. Anyway, guys, that's it for this. That's some really crazy cool stuff there with clans. I did not really see that coming. That's awesome, the idea of swapping between characters. I do sort of like the idea of having one character that is me, but of course you could just sort of leave a character up there in a big castle and just swap to the other ones and assume I am controlling them like my mind puppets. I don't know. It's pretty cool though, nonetheless. And I'm sure, like most things, they're going to have lots of toggles and switches, so if you want to disable seasons, speed them up, or make it so your crops grow really quick and spawn in a bunch of people or whatever, I'm sure there's going to be options for all that as this game develops. Anyway guys, that's it. I am EctoSage. Thanks a bunch for watching. Hopefully this information was informative. It's pretty damn cool, actually. Yeah, that's it. Thanks a bunch for watching, or more importantly, probably listening, and I shall see you guys next time. Ta-ta.